In 1897, H.G. Wells published a science fiction novel that both frightened and fascinated Victorian England. It told the story of a conflict between mankind and extraterrestrial race. This novel was titled The War of the Worlds.
The novel, which was one of the first of its kind, was so popular that over 120 years later, its story is still told through movies, television, comic books, theater, and radio shows.
On Halloween 1938, Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater Company performed The War of the Worlds as a live radio show and updated the time and location to be relevant to 1938 audiences.
Thousands of listeners tuned in to the Columbia Broadcasting System that night, many missing the opening disclaimer that the program was a work of fiction based on H.G. Wells' classic novel. As the program progressed, many people thought what was being broadcast was actually happening, causing mass hysteria across the country.
Tonight, we present to you our adaptation of Orson Welles' original radio broadcast. In the spirit of the Mercury Theater Company, we have updated the time and location of our broadcast for our 2020 audience.
And now, Carson High School Theater Arts presents the Cohort 2 Advanced Theater Arts on air with War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, adapted from the original 1938 broadcast by Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater Company.
We know now that in early years of the 21st century, this world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than man's, and yet as mortal as his own.
We know now that as human beings busied themselves about their various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied, perhaps almost as narrowly as a man with a microscope might scrutinize the transient creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water.
With infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or by design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
Yet across an immense ethereal gulf, minds that to our minds, as ours are to the beast in the jungle, intellects vast, cool and unsympathetic, regarded this earth with envious eyes and slowly and surely drew their plans against us.
In the 20th year of the 21st century came the Great Disillusionment. It was near the end of October. Business was better, the COVID-19 scare was nearly over, more people were back at work, and sales were picking up.
On this particular evening, October 30th, an estimated 32 million people were listening on their satellite radios and cellular devices.
For the next 24 hours, not much change in the temperature. A slight atmospheric disturbance of undetermined origin is reported over Vancouver, causing a low-pressure area to move down rather rapidly over the northwestern states, bringing a forecast of rain accompanied by winds of light gale force. Maximum temperature 66, minimum 48. This weather report comes to you from the Government Weather Bureau. You're listening to Pisces Satellite Radio. Next up, we bring you another installment of our totally social distance at-home concert series. Here's Ramona Raquelio doing a Shub Woolley classic.
Well, I saw the thing coming out of the sky. It had one long horn, one big eye. I commenced to shaking and I suddenly looks like a purple people eater to me. It was a one-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people eater. One-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people eater. One-eyed, one-horned, flying purple people eater. Sure looks strange to me.
Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt our program of dance music to bring you a special bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News. At 20 minutes before 8 Central Time, Professor Farrell of the Mount Jennings Conservatory, Chicago, Illinois, reports observing several explosions of incandescent gas occurring at regular intervals on the planet Mars. The spectroscope indicates the gas to be hydrogen and moving towards the Earth with enormous velocity. Professor Pearson of the Fleischmann Planetarium at the University of Nevada, Reno, confirms Farrell's observation and describes the phenomenon as, quote, like a jet of blue flame shot from a gun, unquote. We now return you to your regularly scheduled programming.
Mr. Purple People Eater, what's your line? He said eat the purple people and it sure is fine. That's not the reason that I came to land.
I wanna get a job in a rock and roll band.
We are now ready to take you to the Fleischmann Planetarium, where Carla Phillips, our commentator, will interview Professor Regina Pearson, famous astronomer. We take you now to Reno, Nevada.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Carla Phillips speaking to you from the Fleischmann Planetarium at the University of Nevada, Reno. I'm standing in a large semicircular room, pitch black except for an oblong split in the ceiling. Through this opening, I can see a sprinkling of stars that cast a kind of frosty glow over the intricate mechanism of the huge telescope. The ticking sound you hear is from the vibration of the clockwork. Professor Pearson stands directly above me on a small platform, peering through a giant lens, where she ceaselessly watches the heavens. Professor, may I begin our questions? At any time, Miss Phillips. Professor, would you please tell our radio audience exactly what you see as you observe the planet Mars through your telescope? Nothing unusual at the moment, Miss Phillips. A dark red disk swimming in the blue sky. Transverse stripes across the disk. Quite distant now because Mars happens to be the point nearest to the Earth. Opposition, as we call it. In your opinion, what do these transverse stripes signify, Professor Pearson? Not canals, I assure you, Miss Phillips, although that's a popular conjecture of those who imagine Mars to be inhabited. From a scientific viewpoint, those stripes are merely a result of atmospheric conditions particular to the planet. Then you're quite convinced as a scientist that living intelligence as we know it does not exist on Mars? I'd say the chances of it are 1,000 to 1. By the way, Professor, for the benefit of our listeners, how far is Mars from Earth? Approximately 40 million miles. Well, that seems a safe enough distance. Thank you. Just a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Professor Pearson has just received an email that seems to be of grave importance. While she reads it, let me remind you that we are speaking to you from the Fleischmann Planetarium at the University of Nevada, Reno, where we are interviewing the world-famous astronomer, Professor Regina Pearson. One moment, please. Professor Pearson has passed me the message which she has just received. Professor, may I read the message to the listening audience? Certainly, Miss Phillips. Ladies and gentlemen, I shall read to you an email addressed to Professor Pearson from Dr. Gray of the Nevada Seismological Lab here at the university. 9:15 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Seismograph registered shock of almost earthquake intensity occurring within a radius of 20 miles of Reno. Please investigate. Signed, Lloyd Gray, Chief of Astronomical Division. Professor Pearson, could this occurrence possibly have something to do with the disturbances observed on the planet Mars? Hardly, Miss Phillips. This is probably a meteorite of unusual size, and its arrival at this particular time is merely a coincidence. However, we shall conduct a search as soon as daylight permits. Thank you, Professor. Ladies and gentlemen, for the past several minutes, we've been speaking to you from the Fleischmann Planetarium at the University of Nevada, Reno, bringing you a special interview with the Professor Regina Pearson, noted astronomer. This is Carla Phillips speaking. We are returning you now to our downtown studio.
Next up on our totally social distance at-home concert series, the mellow stylings of Bobby Milliot.
I'm waiting for my spaceship to come back to me. It's coming back for me. I don't really care if you believe it's coming back for me, yeah. Been living in a lonesome galaxy, but in my dreams I see I'm coming rescue me. Look up in the sky and there they'll be. I bet you'll think of me then. They're coming back for me. They're coming back for me, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, here's the latest bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News. Toronto, Canada. Professor Morse of McGill University reports observing a total of 3 explosions on the planet Mars between the hours of 7:45 p.m. and 9:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This confirms earlier reports received from American observatories. Now, nearer home comes a special announcement from Carson City, Nevada. It is reported that at 8:50 p.m., a huge flaming object, believed to be a meteorite, fell on a farm in a farming neighborhood of Gardnerville, Nevada, 22 miles from Carson City. The flash in the sky was visible within a radius of several hundred miles, and the noise of the impact was heard as far north as Garlack. We have dispatched a special mobile unit to the scene, and we will have our commentator, Carla Phillips, give you a description as soon as she can reach there from Reno. In the meantime, here's a public service announcement from the Nevada Highway Patrol.
Beep, beep, beep,
Driving is not a game.
beep, beep, beep,
If you text and drive,
beep, 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 beep.
you may not see that other spaceship coming. Don't be a space invader. Stay safe, stay back. Don't text and drive. Brought to you by the Nevada Highway Patrol.
We take you now to Gardnerville, Nevada.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Carla Phillips again, at the Wilmuth Farm, Gardnerville, Nevada. Professor Pearson and myself made the 49 miles from Reno in 10 minutes by helicopter. Well, I hardly know where to begin. To paint for you a picture of the strange scene before my eyes, like something out of a modern amazing comics. Well, I just got here. I haven't had a chance to look around yet. I guess that's it. Yes, I guess that's the thing. Directly in front of me, half buried in a vast pit. Must have struck with terrific force. The ground is covered with splinters of a tree. It must have struck on its way down. What I can see of the object itself doesn't look very much like a meteor. At least not the meteors I've seen. It looks more like a huge cylinder. It has a diameter of... What would you say, Professor Pearson?
What's that?
What would you say? What is the diameter?
About 30 yards.
About 30 yards. The metal on the sheath is, well, I've never seen anything like it. The color is sort of yellowish white. Curious spectators are now pressing close to the object in spite of the efforts of the police to keep them back. They're getting in front of my line of vision. Would you mind standing to one side, please?
One side there! One side!
While the policemen are pushing the crowd back, here's Mrs. Wilmuth, owner of the farm here. She may have some interesting facts to add. Mrs. Wilmuth, would you please tell the radio audience as much as you remember of this rather unusual visitor that dropped into your backyard? Step closer, please. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mrs. Wilmuth.
Well, I was listening to the radio.
Closer and louder, please.
Pardon me?
Louder, please, and closer.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I was listening to the radio and kind of half drowsing. That professor man was talking about Mars, so I was half dozing and half
Yes, Miss Wilmuth. Then what happened?
As I was saying, I was listening to the radio kind of halfway.
Yes, Mrs. Wilmuth, and then you saw something.
Not first off, I heard something.
And what did you hear?
A hissing sound like this. Kind of like a 4th of July rocket.
Then what?
Turned my head out the window, would have swore I was sleeping and dreaming.
Yes?
I seen a kind of greenish streak and then zinga, something smacked the ground, knocked me clear out of my chair.
Well, were you frightened, Mrs. Wilmuth?
Well, I ain't quite sure. I reckon I was kind of riled.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilmuth, thank you.
Want me to tell you some more?
No, that's quite all right. That's plenty. Ladies and gentlemen, you just heard Mrs. Wilmuth, owner of the farm where this thing has fallen. I wish I could convey the atmosphere, the background of this fantastic scene. Hundreds of cars are parked in a field in back of us. Police are trying to rope off the roadway leading to the farm, but it's no use. They're breaking right through. Cars' headlights throw an enormous spot on the pit where the object's half buried. Some of the more daring souls are now venturing near the edge. Their silhouettes stand out against the metal sheen. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there's something I haven't mentioned in all this excitement, but now it's becoming more distinct. Perhaps you've caught it already on your radio. Listen. Do you hear it? It's a curious humming noise that seems to come from inside the object. I'll move the microphone nearer. Now we're not more than 25 feet away. Can you hear it now? Oh, Professor Pearson!
Yes, Miss Phillips?
Can you tell us the meaning of that scraping noise inside the thing?
Possibly the unequal cooling of its surface?
I see. Do you still think it's a meteor, Professor?
I don't know what to think. The metal casing is definitely extraterrestrial, not found on this Earth. Friction with the Earth's atmosphere usually tears holes in the meteorite. That thing is smooth, and as you can see, a cylindrical shape.
Just a minute! Something's happening! Ladies and gentlemen, this is terrific!
This end of the thing is beginning to flake off. The top is beginning to rotate like a screw. The thing must be hollow.
Keep moving! Look, the darn thing's unscrewing.
Keep back there, Tiny.
Maybe there's men in there trying to escape.
It's red hot. They'll burn to a cinder.
Keep back there, keep those idiots back.
She's off. The top is loose.
Look out there!
Stand back.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most terrifying thing I have ever witnessed. Wait a minute. Someone's crawling out of the hollow top. Someone or something. I can see peering out of that black hole 2 luminous discs. Are they eyes? It might be a face. It might be... Good heavens! Something's wriggling out of the shadow like a gray snake. Now it's another one and another. They look like tentacles to me. There, I can see the thing's body. It's large. Large as a bear, and it glistens like wet leather. But that face... Ladies and gentlemen, it's indescribable. I can hardly force myself to keep looking at it. The eyes are black and gleam like a serpent. The mouth is V-shaped and with saliva dripping from its rimpless lips that seem to quiver and pulsate. The monster, or whatever it is, can hardly move. It seems weighed down by possibly gravity or something. The thing's raising up. The crowd falls back now. They've seen plenty. This is the most extraordinary experience. I can't find words. I'll put this microphone with me as I talk. I'll have to stop the description until I can find a new position. Hold on, will you please? I'll be right back in a minute.
We are bringing you an eyewitness account of what's happening on the Wilmuth Farm, Gardnerville, Nevada. We now return you to Carla Phillips in Gardnerville.
Ladies and gentlemen, am I on? Ladies and gentlemen, here I am, back of a stone wall that adjoins Mrs. Wilmot's garden. From here, I get a sweep of the whole scene. I'll give you every detail as long as I can talk, as long as I can see. More state police have arrived. They're drawing up a cordon in front of the pit, about 30 of them. No need to push the crowd back now. They're willing to keep their distance. The captain is conferring with someone. We can't quite see who. Oh yes, I believe it's Professor Pearson. Yes, it is. Now they've parted. The professor moves around to one side, studying the object, while the captain and 2 policemen advance with something in their hands. I can see it now. It's a white handkerchief tied to a pole. A flag of truce. If those creatures know what that means, what anything means... Wait, something's happening. A humped shape is rising out of the pit. I can make out a small beam of light against the mirror. What's that? There's a jet of flame springing from the mirror, and it leaps right at the advancing men. It strikes them head on. Good Lord, they're turning into flame! Now the whole field's caught on fire. The woods, the barns, the gas tanks of automobiles, it's spreading everywhere. It's coming this way about 20 yards to my right.
Ladies and gentlemen, due to the circumstance beyond our control, we are unable to continue the broadcast from Gardnerville. Evidently, there's some difficulty with our field transmission. However, we will return to that point at the earliest opportunity. In the meantime, we have a late bulletin from San Diego, California. Professor Indokofer, speaking at a dinner of the California Astronomical Society, expressed the opinion that the explosions on Mars are undoubtedly nothing more than severe volcanic disturbances on the surface of the planet. You are listening to Pisces Satellite Radio.
Ground control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Take your protein pills and put your helmet on. Major Tom to ground control. I'm stepping through the door, and I'm floating in a most peculiar way.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have just received a message that came in from Gardnerville by telephone. Just a moment. At least 40 people, including 6 state troopers lie dead in a field east of the village of Gardnerville. Their bodies burned and distorted beyond all possible recognition. The next voice you will hear will be that of Brigadier General Montgomery Smith, commander of the National Guard at Carson City, Nevada.
I have been requested by the Governor of Nevada to place the counties of Douglas, Carson, Lyon, Storey, and Washoe as far west as Yerington and east to Incline Village under martial law. No one will be permitted to enter this area except by special pass issued by state or military authorities. 4 companies of the National Guard are proceeding from Carson City to Gardnerville and will aid in the evacuation of homes within the range of military operations. Thank you.
You have just been listening to General Montgomery Smith, commanding the National Guard at Carson City. In the meantime, further details of the catastrophe at Gardnerville are coming in. The strange creatures, after unleashing their deadly assault, crawled back into their pit and made no attempt to prevent the efforts of the firemen to recover the bodies and extinguish the fire. Combined fire departments of Carson and Douglas counties are fighting the flames which menace the entire countryside. We have been unable to establish any contact with our mobile unit at Gardnerville, but we hope to be able to return you there at the earliest possible moment. In the meantime, we take you. Just one moment, please. Ladies and gentlemen, I have just been informed that we have finally established communication with an eyewitness of the tragedy. Professor Pearson has been located at a farmhouse near Gardnerville, where she has established an emergency observation post. As a scientist, she will give you her explanation of the calamity. The next voice you will hear will be that of Professor Regina Pearson. Professor Pearson?
Of the creatures in the rocket cylinder at Gardnerville, I can give you no authoritative information, either as to their nature, their origin, or their purposes here on Earth. Of their destructive instruments, I might venture some conjectural explanation. For want of a better term, I shall refer to the mysterious weapon as a heat ray. It's all too evident that these creatures have scientific knowledge far in advance of our own. It is my guess, in some way, they're able to generate intense heat in a chamber of absolute non-conductivity. This intense heat they project in a parallel beam against any object they choose, by means of a polished parabolic mirror of unknown composition, much as the mirror of a lighthouse projects a beam of light. That's my conjecture of the origin of the heat ray.
Thank you, Professor Pearson. Ladies and gentlemen, here's a bulletin from Carson City. The charred body of Carla Phillips has been identified in a local hospital. Now, here's another bulletin from Washington, D.C. Office of the Director of the National Red Cross reports 10 units of Red Cross emergency workers have been assigned to the headquarters of the National Guard stationed outside Gardnerville, Nevada. Here's a bulletin from Douglas County Fire Department. The fires at Gardnerville and vicinity are now under control. Scouts report all quiet in the pit and no sign of life appearing from the mouth of the cylinder. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have a special statement from Miss Hillary McDonald, Vice President in charge of operations.
We have received a request from the National Guard to place at their disposal our entire broadcasting facilities. In view of the gravity of the situation and believing that the media has a responsibility to serve in the public interest at all times, we are turning over our facilities to the National Guard.
We now take you to the field headquarters of the National Guard near Gardnerville, Nevada.
This is Captain Lansing of the Signal Corps, attached to the National Guard, now engaged in military operations in the vicinity of Gardnerville, Nevada. Situation arising from the reported presence of certain individuals of unidentified nature is now under complete control. The cylindrical object, which lies in a pit directly below our position, is surrounded on all sides by 8 battalions of infantry with heavy field pieces, but adequately armed with rifles and machine guns. All cause for alarm, if such cause ever existed, is now entirely unjustified. The things, or whatever they are, do not even venture to poke their heads above the pit. I can see their hiding place plainly in the glare of the searchlights here. With their reported resources, these creatures can scarily stand up against heavy machine gun fire. Anyway, it's interesting outing for the troops. I can make out their khaki uniforms crossing back and forth in front of the lights. It looks almost like a real war. There appears to be some slight smoke in the woods bordering the Carson River. Probably fire started by campers or a gender reveal gone wrong. Well, we ought to see some action soon. One of the companies is deploying on the left flank. A quick thrust and it'll be all over. Wait, no, wait a minute. I see something on the top of the cylinder. Oh, no, it's nothing but a shadow. Now the troops are on the edge of the Wilmoth farm. 7,000 armed men closing in on an old metal tube. Wait, that wasn't a shadow. It's something moving, solid metal, kind of shield-like affair rising up out of the cylinder. It's going higher and higher. Why is it standing on legs? Actually rearing up on a sort of metal framework. Now it's reaching above the trees and the searchlights are on it. Hold on!
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a grave announcement to make. Incredible as it may seem, both the observations of science and the evidence of our eyes lead to the inescapable assumption that those strange beings who landed in the Nevada farmlands tonight are the vanguard of an invading army from the planet Mars. The battle, which took place tonight at Gardnerville, has ended in one of the most startling defeats ever suffered by an army in modern times. 7,000 men armed with rifles and machine guns pitted against a single fighting machine of the invaders from Mars. 120 known survivors. The rest strewn over the battle area from Gardnerville to Sparks, crushed and trampled to death under the metal feet of the monster, or burned to cinders by its heat ray. The monster is now in control of western Nevada. Communication lines are down from Salt Lake City to the Pacific Ocean. Railroad tracks are torn and service from San Francisco to Salt Lake City discontinued, except routing some of the trains through Boise and Phoenix. Highways to the north, south, and west are clogged with frantic human traffic. Police and Army reserves are unable to control the mad flight. By morning, the fugitives will have swelled neighboring counties. It is estimated to twice their normal population. At this time, martial law prevails throughout northern and western Nevada and parts of California. We take you now to Washington for a special broadcast on the national emergency. The Secretary of the Interior.
Citizens of the nation, I shall not try to conceal the gravity of the situation that confronts the country, nor the concern of your own government in protecting the lives and property of its people. However, I wish to impress upon you, private citizens and public officials, all of you, the urgent need for calm and resourceful action. Fortunately, this formidable enemy is still confined to a comparatively small area, and we may place our faith in the military forces to keep them there. In the meantime, placing our faith in God, we must continue the performance of our duties, each and every one of us, so that we may confront this destructive adversary with a nation united, courageous, and consecrated to the preservation of human supremacy on this earth. I thank you.
You have just heard the Secretary of the Interior speaking from Washington. Bulletins too numerous to read are piling up in the studio here. We are informed the central portion of Nevada is blacked out from radio communication due to the effect of the heat ray upon power lines and electrical equipment. Here is a special bulletin from New York. Cables received from English, French, German scientific bodies offering assistance. Astronomers report continued gas outbursts at regular intervals on the planet Mars. Majority voice opinion that the enemy will be reinforced by additional rocket machines. Attempts made to locate Professor Pearson of the University of Nevada, Reno, who has observed Martians at close range. It is feared she was lost in the recent battle. Stead Air Force Base. Scouting planes report 3 Martian machines visible above treetops, moving north toward Reno with population fleeing ahead of them. Heat ray not in use, although advancing at express train speed, invaders pick their way carefully. They seem to be making a conscious effort to avoid destruction of cities and countryside. However, they stop to uproot power lines, bridges, and railroad tracks. Their apparent objective is to crush resistance, paralyze communication, and disorganize human society. Here's a bulletin from Sacramento, California. Hunters have stumbled on a second cylinder similar to the first embedded in the woods near Grass Valley. Army field pieces are proceeding from Sacramento to blow up the second invading unit before the cylinder can be opened and fighting machine rigged. They are taking up position in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountains. Another bulletin from Stead Air Force Base. Scouting planes report enemy machine, now 3 in number, increasing speed westward, kicking over houses and trees in their evident haste to form a conjunction with their allies in Northern California. Machines also sighted by telephone operator Ista Beatty within 10 miles of Area 51. Here's a bulletin from Sacramento, California. Fleet of Army bombers carrying heavy explosives flying south in pursuit of the enemy. Scouting planes act as guides. They keep the speeding enemy in sight. Just a moment, please. Ladies and gentlemen, we've made contact with the artillery stations in adjacent villages to give you direct reports in the zone of the advancing enemy. First, we take you to the battery of the 22nd Field Artillery, located in the Sierra Nevada mountains.
Range 32 meters. 32 meters. Projection 39 degrees. 39 degrees. Fire! 140 yards to the right, sir. Shift range 31 meters. 31 meters. Projection 37 degrees. 37 degrees. Fire! Ahead, sir. We got a tripod of one of them. They've stopped. The others are trying to repair it. Quick, get the range. Shift 30 meters. 30 meters. Projection 27 degrees. 27 degrees. Fire! Can't see the shell land, sir. They're letting off a smoke. What is it? A black smoke, sir. Moving this way. Flying close to the ground. It's moving fast. Put on gas mask. Get ready to fire. Shift 24 meters. 24 meters. Projection 24 degrees. 24 degrees. Fire! Still can't see, sir. The smoke's coming nearer. Get the range. 23 meters. 23 meters. Projection 22 degrees.
Army bombing plane V-843 off Reno, Nevada. Lieutenant Vogt, commanding 8 bombers. Reporting to Commander Fairfax, Stead Air Force Base. This is Vogt reporting to Commander Fairfax, Stead Air Force Base. Enemy tripod machines now in sight. Reinforced by 3 machines from the NorCal cylinder, 6 altogether. 1 machine already crippled, believed hit by a shell from Army gun in Sierra Nevada mountains. Guns now appear silent, a heavy black fog hanging close to the earth, of extreme density, nature unknown. No sign of heat ray. Enemy now turns west, crossing the American River into the Sierras. Another straddles the Truckee River. Evident objective is Reno. They're pushing down a high-tension power station. The machines are close together now and we're ready to attack. Planes circling, ready to strike. 1,000 yards and we'll be over. The first 800 yards, 600, 400, 200. There they go, the giant arm raised. Green flash, they're spraying us with flame. 2,000 feet. Engines are giving out. No chance to release bombs. Only one thing left. Drop on them, plane and all. We're diving on the first one. The engine's gone. 8.
This is Reno, Nevada, calling Stead. This is Reno, Nevada, calling Stead. Come in, please.
This is Stead, go ahead.
8 Army bombers in engagement with an enemy tripod machines over the Sierra Nevada mountains. Engines incapacitated by heat ray. All crashed. 1 enemy machine destroyed. Enemy now discharging heavy black smoke in the direction of...
This is Carson City, Nevada. This is Carson City, Nevada. Warning. Poisonous black smoke pouring in from Lake Tahoe reaches I-580. Gas masks useless. Urge population to move into open spaces. Automobiles
2X2L calling CQ. 2X2L calling CQ. 2X2L calling 8X3R. Come in, please.
This is 8X3R coming back at 2X2L.
How's reception? How's reception? Kay, please. Where are you? 8X3R? What's the matter? Where are you?
I'm speaking from the roof of the broadcasting building, Reno, Nevada. The bells you hear are ringing to warn people to evacuate the city as Martians approach. Estimated in the last 2 hours, 3 million people have moved out along the roads to the north. I-580 still kept open for motor traffic. Avoid I-80, hopelessly jammed. All communication with neighboring areas closed 10 minutes ago. No more defenses. Our army wiped out. Artillery, Air Force, everything wiped out. This may be the last broadcast. We'll stay here till the end. People are holding service below us in the cathedral. Streets are all jammed. Noise in the crowds like New Year's Eve in New York City. Wait a minute. Enemy is now sight above the hills, moving fast. Five great machines. I've just received a text message. Martian cylinders are falling all over the country. One outside Los Angeles, one in Chicago, New York. Seems to be timed in space. Now the first machine reaches the river. He stands watching, looking over the city. His steel, cowlish head is even with the skyscrapers. He waits for the others. They rise like a line of new towers in the city's downtown. Now they're lifting their metal hands. This is the end now. Smoke comes out, black smoke, drifting over the city. People in the streets see it now. They're running towards the river, thousands of them, dropping like rats. Now the smoke's spreading faster. It's reached Midtown. People are trying to run away from it, but it's no use. They're falling like flies. Now the smoke's 100 yards away. It's 50 feet!
2X2L calling CQ. 2X2L calling CQ. 2X2L calling CQ. New York, isn't there anyone on the air? Isn't there anyone on the air? Isn't there anyone? 2X2L.
As I record these words into what's left of my voice recorder, I'm obsessed with the thought that I may be the last living woman on Earth. I've been hiding in this empty house near Gardnerville, a small island of daylight cut off by the black smoke of the rest of the world. All that happened before the arrival of these monstrous creatures in the world now seems part of another life, a life that has no continuity to the present. A furtive existence of a lonely derelict who pencils these words on the back of some astronomical notes bearing the signature of Regina Pearson. I look down at my blackened hands, my torn shoes, my tattered clothes, and I try to connect them with the professor who works at the university, and who, on the night of October 30th, glimpsed into her telescope at the orange splash of a distant planet. My wife, my colleagues, my students, my observatory, my books, my world? Where are they? Did they ever exist? Am I Regina Pearson? What day is it? Do days exist without calendars? Does time pass when there is no human hand left to wind the clocks? In recording of my daily life, I tell myself I shall preserve human history inside this little device that was meant to record the movements of the stars. But to record, I must live. And to live, I must eat. I find a moldy bread in the kitchen and an orange not too spoiled to swallow. I keep watch at the window. From time to time, I catch a sight of a Martian above the black smoke. The smoke still holds the house in its black coil. But at length, there is a hissing sound, and suddenly, a Martian mounted on top of his machine, spraying the air with a jet of steam as if to dissipate the smoke. I watch in the corner as his huge metal legs nearly brush against the house. Exhausted by terror, I fall asleep. It's morning. Morning. Sun streams in the window. A black cloud of gas has lifted and scorched the meadows to the north as I look through the black snowstorm passed over them. I venture from the house. I make my way to a road. No traffic. Here and there a wrecked car, baggage overturned, and a blackened skeleton. I push on north. For some reason, I feel safer trailing these monsters than running away from them, and I keep a careful watch. I have seen the Martians feed. Should one of those machines appear over the top of the trees, I am ready to fling myself flat on the earth. I come to a chestnut tree. October chestnuts are ripe. I fill my pockets. I must keep alive. 2 days I wander in a vague northerly direction through a desolate world. Finally, I notice a living creature. A small red squirrel in the tree. I stare at him in wonder. He stares back at me. I believe in that moment, the animal and I shared the same emotion, the joy of finding another living being. I push on north. I find dead cows in the brackish field, beyond the charred ruins of a dairy. The silo remains standing guard over the wasteland like a lighthouse deserted by sea. Astride the silo perches a weather vane. The arrow points north. The next day, I come to a city vaguely familiar in its contours, yet the buildings strangely dwarfed and leveled off, as if a giant hand sliced off the highest towers with a capricious swipe of his hand. I reach the outskirts. I found Carson City, undemolished but humbled by some whim of advancing Martians. Presently, an odd feeling of being watched. I caught sight of something crouching in the doorway. I made a step towards it. It rose up and became a man armed with a large knife.
Stop. Where did you come from?
I come from many places. A long time ago from Reno. Presently, I just left Gardnerville.
Gardnerville, huh?
Yes.
Gardnerville. There's no food here. This is my country. All this end of town down to the river. There's only food for one. Which way are you going?
I don't know. I guess I'm looking for people.
What was that? Did you hear something just then?
Only a bird. A live bird.
You get to know that birds have shadows these days. Say, we're in the open here. Let's crawl into this doorway if we're going to talk.
Have you seen any Martians?
Nah, they've gone up to Reno. At night, the sky's alive with their lights, just as if people were still living in it. By daylight, you can't see them. 5 days ago, a couple of them carried something big across the flats from the airport. I believe they're learning how to fly.
Fly?
Yeah, fly.
Then it's all over with humanity. Stranger, there's still you and I. 2 of us left.
They've got themselves in solid. They've wrecked the greatest country in the world. Those green stars, they're probably falling somewhere every night. They've only lost one machine. There isn't anything to do. We're done. We're licked.
Where were you? You're in uniform.
Yeah, what's left of it. I was in the National Guard. That's a laugh. Wasn't any war with the Martians any more than there's war between men and ants.
And we're eatable ants. I found that out. What will they do with us?
I've thought it all out. Right now, we're caught as we're wanted. The Martian only has to go a few miles to get a crowd on the run. But they won't keep doing that. They'll begin catching us, systematic-like, keeping the best and storing us in cages and things. They haven't begun on us yet.
Not begun?
Not begun. All that's happened so far is because we don't have the sense enough to keep quiet, bothering them with guns and such stuff, and losing our heads and rushing off in crowds. Now, instead of our rushing around blind, we've got to fix ourselves up. Fix ourselves according to the way things are now. Cities, nations, civilization, progress, done.
But if that's so, what is there to live for?
Well, there won't be any more concerts for 1,000,000 years or so, and no nice little dinners at restaurants. If it's amusement you're after, I guess the game's up.
And what is there left?
Life. That's what. I want to live. Yeah. And so do you. We're not going to be exterminated. And I don't mean to be caught either, and tamed and fattened like an ox.
What are you going to do?
I'm going on, right under their feet. I got a plan. We, humans, as humans, are finished. We don't know enough. We got to learn plenty before we've got a chance. And we've got to live and keep free while we learn. See? I thought it all out, see?
Tell me the rest.
Well, it isn't all of us that were made for wild beasts, and that's what it's got to be. That's why I watched you. All these little office workers that used to live in these houses, they'd be no good. They haven't any stuff to them. They just used to run off to work. I've seen hundreds of them running wild to catch their commuter train in the morning for fear they'd get canned if they didn't. Running back at night afraid they won't be in time for dinner. Lives insured and a little invested in case of accidents. And on Sundays, worried about the hereafter. The Martians will be a godsend for those guys. Nice, roomy cages, good food, no worries. After a week or so of chasing about the fields on an empty stomach, they'll come and be glad to be caught.
You've thought it all out, haven't you?
You bet I have. And that isn't all. These Martians will make pets of some of them, train them to do tricks. Who knows? Get sentimental over the pet boy who grew up and had to be killed. And some, maybe, they'll train to hunt us.
That's impossible. No human
Yes, they will. There's men who will do it gladly. If one of them ever comes after me, well...
In the meantime, you and I and others like us, where are we to live when Martians rule the Earth?
I've got it all figured out. We'll live underground. I've been thinking about the sewers. Under our feet are miles and miles of them. Bigger ones in bigger cities. The main ones are big enough for anybody. Then there's cellars, vaults, underground storerooms, railway tunnels, subways. You begin to see, huh? And we'll get a bunch of strong men together. No weak ones. That rubbish? Out.
And you meant me to go.
Well, I gave you a chance, didn't I?
We won't quarrel about that. Go on.
And we've got to make safe places for us to stay in. See, and get all the books we can, science books. That's where people like you come in, see? We'll raid the museums. We'll even spy on the Martians. It may not be so much we have to learn as before. Just imagine this. 4 or 5 of their own fighting machines suddenly start off. Heat rays right and left, and not a Martian in them. Not a Martian in them. But humans. Humans who have learned the way how. It may even be in our time. Gee, imagine having one of them lovely things with its heat ray wide and free. We'd turn it on the Martians. We'd turn it on men. We'd bring everybody down to their knees.
That's your plan?
You and me, and a few more of us. We'd own the world.
I see.
Say, what's the matter? Where are you going?
Not to your world. Goodbye, stranger. After parting ways with the artilleryman, I came to my last destination. I entered a silent Truckee Meadows and made my way northward towards what's left of downtown Reno. I reached First Street, and there again was black powder, several bodies, and an evil, ominous smell coming up from the grates of the cellars of some of the houses. I wander up through the casinos. I stood alone under the sign that reads Reno, biggest little city in the world. I caught sight of a lean dog running down Virginia Street with a piece of dark brown meat in his jaws, and a pack of starving mongrels at his heels. He made a wide circle around me, as though if he feared that I might prove to be a fresh competitor. I walked towards the university in the direction of the strange powder, past silent window shops displaying their mute wares to empty sidewalks. From over the top of the university buildings, I watched a flock of black birds circling the sky. I hurried on. Suddenly, I caught sight of the hood of a Martian machine standing somewhere in the quad, gleaming in the late afternoon sun. An insane idea. I rushed recklessly across the campus and toward the Martian. I climbed a small wall near the student union. From there I could see, standing in a silent row along the mall, 19 of those great metal titans, their cowls empty, and their great steel arms hanging listlessly by their sides. I looked in vain for the monsters that inhabited those machines. Suddenly, my eyes were attracted to the immense flock of black birds that hovered directly below me. They circled the ground, and there, before my eyes, stark and silent, lay the Martians, with hungry birds pecking and tearing brown shreds of flesh from their dead bodies.
Later, when the Martians' bodies were examined by laboratories, it was found that they were killed by the virus and disease against which we humans have been battling for months.
Their systems were unprepared, slain. After all, man's defenses had failed. by the humblest thing that God in his wisdom put upon this earth.
Before the cylinder fell, there was a general persuasion that through all the deep of space, no life existed beyond the petty surface of our minute sphere. Now we see further.
It may be that the destruction of the Martians is only a temporary reprieve.
To them, and not to us, is the future ordained, perhaps.
Strange it seems now to sit at my peaceful study at UNR, writing down the last chapter of this record begun at the deserted farm in Garnerville. Strange to see from my window the university spires dim and blue through the April haze. Strange to watch children playing in the streets. Strange to see young people strolling the green where new spring grass heals the last black scars of the bruised earth. Strange to watch sightseers enter the museum where the disassembled parts of the Martian machines are kept on public view. Strange when I recall the time when I first saw it, bright, clean-cut, hard, and silent, under the dawn of that last great day.
Our story has ended, but we want to assure you, ladies and gentlemen, that the War of the Worlds has no further significance than the holiday offering it was intended to be.
It is CHS Advanced Theater's own radio version of dressing up in a sheet and jumping out of the bush and saying, boo.
Starting now, we couldn't soap all your windows and steal all your garden gates by tomorrow night.
So we did the next best thing.
We annihilated the world before your very ears.
You will be relieved, I hope, to learn that we didn't mean it.
So goodbye, everybody, and remember that terrible lesson you learned tonight.
The grinning, glowing, globular invader of your living room is an inhabitant of the pumpkin patch.
And if your doorbell rings and nobody's there, that was no Martian, it's Halloween.
This has been a production of Carson High School Theater Arts. Our program, like thousands of other theater programs across the country, has been hit particularly hard by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Please consider making a donation to the Carson High School Theater Department today.
Thank you so much for your continued support, and we hope to bring you live performances again very soon.